Welcome everybody to Howling with the Wolfe. Another week away from Thanksgiving, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot to be thankful for if you were Dolphins fans rooting for Tua to end up in Miami. A little bit of a somber Howling with the Wolfe this week, but I think it's very important to talk about Tua Tagovailoa and the impact that his injury has on the Dolphins and just about every other quarterback-needy team. It's going to cause ripple waves throughout. So I think that there's a lot to discuss. I will tell you guys that I'm going more in depth about this topic. Friday, ESPN.com, I'm coming out with a piece, a 1,300-word piece about what this means for the Dolphins, the impact this injury has on the Dolphins and other quarterback-needy teams. I was able to talk to a medical expert to give me some really thoughts and insight into Tua's injury and exactly what he's looking at for recovery and what NFL teams may be looking at and evaluations. And I'll give you guys a little bit of tidbits just because y'all came to watch the show. And yeah, I'll give my take on it. So I think that, there's a lot here. First things first, it's very likely that Tua is not the first quarterback off the board right now, just from what we know about the situation. Joe Burrow was already picking up a lot of steam. I don't know if he had passed Tua in a lot of people's mind, but in some people's mind, he was right there. But now with the hip injury, you look at it and, Joe Burrow might seemingly be QB1 at this point. So the Dolphins, they're projected to have the number 3 overall pick for ESPN's FBI. So here's why it might not be over. Here's why the dream might not be over. And I'll just start with this. The Dolphins have 3 first-round picks. They're the only team to have 3 first-round picks. And for a team with that many picks, you may have a propensity to take a little bit more risks than you would if you had 1 first-round pick. And if Tua does fall off a little bit of the draft radar, they could find themselves in a situation where they use the 2nd or even 3rd of their first-round picks to draft Tua if he clears on their board. And they, unlike other teams, have the ability to wait. They have the ability to wait. I still think that he is a first-round quarterback. I talked to one of our ESPN injury analysts, Stefania Bell, today, and she said she still believes that Tua will be drafted in the first round, and I do too. But it's how far does he fall? And a lot of that will determine what the Dolphins do, how they see him, and how this impacts their search for a quarterback. So, I'll go ahead and jump in a couple of you guys' questions because it's right along where I'm jumping on. Caleb Gray says, do you think that Tua could fall into the later rounds? I don't. I just mentioned that before. I think Tua is going to be a first-round pick. Unless there's something that happens in his rehab, from everything that I've heard about this injury, it's been early optimism. They were able to reduce the hip. If folks don't know, Tua's got a dislocated right hip and a posterior wall fracture. So this is a very rare injury. I talked to Stefania Bell. She told me this is an injury that's usually coming from a car accident. It's a high-energy injury. So, when you hear car accident injury, it's eye-opening because, man, car accident? But, yeah, this is serious. But here's the thing that could be a positive. They say that he's already had the surgery in Houston. 6 weeks, ultimately, he's going to come about getting these workouts. Getting the rest, 6 weeks, and then he's going to be able to rehab some of the trauma that's around this injury. That's what Stefania Bell was able to tell me. And I think that the spring, the winter, we may not know a lot about where Tua is as far as his full rehab, but teams will do their medicals, teams will do their evaluations, and they'll decide whether he's on their board, how high he is on their board. Is he a top 10 pick? Is he a top 20 pick? Is he a bottom half of the first-round pick? I think he'll be in one of those 3 categories, and that will determine how high. If the Dolphins are still high on him, they'll need to pick him to select him. So, I could see a scenario where they take him at 15, 16, 17, and maybe they use that first selection on a Andrew Thomas, an offensive tackle out of Georgia, or if they get lucky, a Chase Young out of Ohio State. And that would be the best-case scenario. Nobody imagined getting Chase Young and Tua before, but this could open the floodgate. So that's the positive. The bad? Well, what if his medicals don't check out? What if the Dolphins, for some reason, like we've seen in the past, with Drew Brees, with his shoulder, don't clear him, and they don't feel comfortable taking him? Well, in that case, then you've got a situation where you have one less top quarterback that you're in the market for. Joe Burrow has been widely considered, maybe the biggest challenge for Tua. He would become QB1 de facto in this scenario that I'm discussing. Justin Herbert would be in the conversation with him, and they would be battling head-to-head. So you would essentially be left with whoever the second guy is in this battle between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, assuming that Cincinnati Bengals secure that number 1 overall pick. So, Dolphins fans, would you be excited for Justin Herbert as your long-term franchise quarterback? I mean, I haven't done a lot on him yet, so I know that I'm not as high on him as Tua or as I, through early evaluations. But if Justin Herbert lands at number 3, number 4 overall, Dolphins fans, are you happy with that? That could potentially be the scenario, and that's probably the negative in this battle, because in what looked like a 2-horse race with one horse just closely behind, if Tua's hurt, now it looks more like a 1-horse race with another horse trailing behind and another horse that's a real big question mark. So that's sort of the scenario, and that could be the bad. And we won't know how the Dolphins feel about the medicals, but I could see it being a positive or a negative depending on the way you spin on it. So let me see what you guys are talking about. We will talk some other Dolphins news. I definitely want to spend a good bit of time on Tua, but we will talk other Dolphins news. Danny SC said 305 says nothing new. Tua to Miami is still alive and well. The dream is still alive. The dream is still alive. The Tua dream is still alive. Yes, it is. And I got another comment from IMDBJX. I think that's 13. Says, I love the work you do with my fans. You're a great reporter. Appreciate you. AJ says they should draft 2 quarterbacks in the first round. Let's dive into this a little bit because that's interesting. I mentioned this briefly in my piece tomorrow. Another plug, ESPN.com. You guys don't want to miss it. If you want to read about Tua, you want to read about the Dolphins, or you want to read about Tua and the Dolphins, that's a story. That's the story of the week for you. It's coming out tomorrow morning. But on this 2 quarterback topic, the last time this really happened in this way was the Dallas Cowboys in 1989 when they drafted Troy Aikman and Steve Walsh. Steve Walsh was a supplementary selection. Troy Aikman was the first overall pick in that draft, and they drafted both. And if I remember right, they thought that they drafted Steve Walsh to eventually trade him, to compete initially, but to eventually trade him. So they did trade Steve Walsh next year. I'm not sure in this era, especially with the Dolphins' need, if they can do that. But at this position, if this is a team to do it at this position, then they should, if there's ever a team to do it, it would be this team at this position, because they've been trying to find a quarterback desperately since Dan Marino retired in 2000. It's been 2 decades. So, this is the year. If any team was going to do it. That being said, I just don't know there's enough reps to go around for a quarterback. I don't know if you're truly being fair to any typical quarterback if you're doing it like that. We're still getting complaints about Josh Rosen not getting a fair shot. Imagine if you draft Tua and Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert plays extremely well and Tua never gets a shot. Or vice versa. If you draft Tua and Justin Herbert and Tua is able to play week 3 and Justin Herbert never gets a true shot. I think there's too much dynamics there, but, this team's all about competing. So, if they feel like the quarterback, we have to nail this position, and we're willing to sacrifice 2 premium picks to do it, then, hey, man, more power to them. I mean, that's admitting that this draft is a crapshoot. There would be some questions about their evaluation skills, whether they can truly evaluate players if they're just taking 2 because they can't nail 1. But, hey, if you're trying to mitigate your risk and, from a strategic perspective, maybe that's a move that you consider. I don't know if I'd do it, but it's not anything to rule out at this point. Any chance I could take you on a date? I'm married, man. I'm sorry. Any chance, this is a question from Drew Welsh, any chance we see Rosen again this year? This topic actually came up in practice this week, and I'll detour to Rosen, and I'm going to hop back on to Tua because that's what this chat is mostly about today. Um, I'm getting, very skeptical that we see Josh Rosen again. Earlier this year, I think we talked about this when Fitz was named the starter again, and I thought that there was a chance that in December, Josh Rosen would start playing some games. We're about a week away from December. Josh Rosen has not played in any more games. Fitz hasn't played spectacular, but he's played good enough to keep the starting job. The question is, have the Dolphins seen enough to evaluate Josh Rosen and make a definitive grade on him? And in my opinion, they think they have. Whether it's fair or not, whether it's true or not, whether Josh Rosen can go somewhere else and be a good quarterback, I'm not sure. But the Dolphins, in my opinion, have decided that they don't think that Josh Rosen's the answer here. And that's why they're playing Ryan Fitzpatrick, because he gives them the best chance to win now. And I think that if this team saw enough in Josh Rosen at this point, they would give him the opportunity. So I think there's a chance that, Fitz, if he continues to struggle or if he gets injured, then maybe later in the season, maybe like the Cincinnati game and the New England game, or maybe that last New York game, you see a little bit of Rosen. But if I was a betting man, I'd bet on Ryan Fitzpatrick starting the rest of the games rather than Josh Rosen getting another start. I know it was my wife. um, let me see. Cake Marino said, "Can we get Lamb and Judy this draft? Tank again for next year and get Lawrence." So I talked about this a little bit in my piece tomorrow. Another plug. I've dropped 3 plugs on this piece tomorrow. So if y'all don't read this piece, I'll be highly upset. But I do not think the Dolphins are going to have the stomach to go through another season like this. It's just one man's opinion, one man's educated opinion. But whether you call this season a tank, an extreme rebuild, a process, whatever you do, I think the Dolphins are just by nature of how their roster is going to be built, going to be better next year than whatever they are this year. They're going to have 14 projected draft picks, 3 in the first round. They're going to have a potential $100+ million in cap space. There is no way they're not going to be better. They're going to be a much better team than next year. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but they're going to win at least double the games, I think, that they're going to win this year. So whether it ends up being 2 wins or 3 wins, I think they get to 4, 5, 6 wins next year. I could even see them, pushing maybe to 7 wins if everything goes right, just because of pure talent. So I just don't see a scenario where they're in position to draft Trevor Lawrence next year. And I don't think they pass on a quarterback this year. I think it's quarterback or bust. And I mentioned this in my story. That's why I think this Tua injury is such a big impact on the Dolphins, because there's no just, hey, let's wait till next year, in my opinion. The Dolphins are always going to say they're keeping their options open, but all the resources they put into this year and getting this quarterback right, I just can't see them folding their fingers and saying, hey, we're going to go through another year of Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen and swing again next year. I just don't see it. I could be wrong, but I just do not see it. I think they're drafting a quarterback in the first round in 2020. We just don't know his name yet. And as far as Lamb and Judy, I mean, playmakers are always exciting. I do TV for ESPN. Playmakers get me on TV, so I always root for playmakers. But receiver, to me, is a mid-tier need. And, teams always say they don't draft for need, and that's true. But they draft best player at a position of need. And that is a position of need, but I think that offensive tackle, edge rusher, and quarterback are all clearly bigger needs than receiver. So unless, you're in a position where maybe at 15, 16, 17, if CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy is on the board and you like him better than the offensive tackle, the edge rusher, or the quarterback there, then maybe you take him there. But otherwise, I see those guys ending up somewhere else, especially Jerry Jeudy. I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. That boy can ball. Yeah, you're right. Somebody mentioned the RG3. Danny SC305 mentioned the RG3 cousin situation. Yeah, that was another situation where, it was different because they drafted a quarterback in the first round and the 4th round. Now, I definitely would condone that, and I think the Dolphins could definitely go that route. But first, I think it's a different spectrum because both guys are expected to be the man. Kirk Cousins was never expected to be the man. He was expected to be sort of a backup quarterback who could develop potentially into something else, and it ended up him being the man, and RG3 ended his career due to injury. So it worked out that way for Washington, but I don't think that's the way they initially intended it. Luis Velasquez out here on the Facebook chat, I got you. He says, if not Tua, do you think they go after a big free agent quarterback, Bridgewater or Cam? Bridgewater already turned him down. I think that well has passed. I think they're going to move on from Bridgewater. But Cam is interesting because he's an MVP talent. He's still a guy who, in my opinion, can lead a team to the playoffs and probably to a championship level if he has the right team around him. But I've heard the Dolphins say enough this offseason that they don't just want to be good. They want to build this team right so that they're great. And they don't just want to make Band-Aid fixes. And although Cam is not necessarily a Band-Aid fix, he may be more of a short-term fix. You don't know what's going on, how long his arm injury, his shoulder injury, and foot injury will keep him back. So I think that would be the most exciting free agent option, and it would help the Dolphins become relevant and good immediately, in my opinion. But for how long? And this team has said they want to build championships and long-standing, competing for a long time. And Cam, I think, is 30 or 31, and he's already taken a lot of hits. I'm not sure if he's the type of player who plays past 35. So you may get 3 years out of Cam, and how many of those years are good? 1, 2, if you're lucky. I just don't see it as a long-term move for this team, and this team has been everything about the long term. So I would love it. I think it would make the Dolphins good, but I just don't see it at this point. I think draft, for me, is what they're going to go for. That's just my take. But thanks for the question, Lewis. Let's see. A couple more questions, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Tua, and I'm going to take a more, and then I'm going to, let's see what else. I'll talk a little bit about the game this week, and we'll wrap it up. Kirosiu, I mispronounced that terribly. I am so sorry. Kasiu Sensei. I'm sorry. I apologize. Do you think we should draft Tua with our first pick of the draft? I talked about this a little earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it again. Medicals are going to determine this completely. If this was 2 weeks ago, before Tua had the hip injury, yes. Run up to the podium, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Alabama, hand in the card. Yeah, I like Tua. I had questions about him. Durability was one of them, and that question definitely hasn't gone away with his hip injury. But I thought that he was the best quarterback in this draft. He has an excellent accuracy, his excellent poise, excellent ability to read coverage. His delivery is sharp, and he just has a moxie to make big plays in big moments. Playmaking ability is one of my top things I love in a quarterback, and Tua has it. So I love him as a player. Can he last? Will he come back and be the same player? And how does he look outside of that Alabama scheme? Those are all question marks I have, and I think teams will have them too. So I'm at this point a little skeptical with using him with that first pick because that's probably going to be a top 5 pick. But if for some reason he's going to be available in the middle rounds, I'm interested. I'm in business. Let's do it. Got a question said, are you taking Tua? I think at this point, from the knowledge I know, I'm taking Tua in the middle rounds. I mean, in the middle of the first round, in the teens. Whether it's that Pittsburgh pick, if I had to trade up, I think that would be an ideal situation. If everything comes back and the medicals are perfect and they think he's going to be ready for week 1, then yeah, maybe I can consider taking him at number 3 or number 4. But as it looks right now, I think the teens will be where I feel comfortable taking him because of the risk, because I know that there's a chance that he never becomes that same player. But just because he's a talent that he is, I think I may be willing to take that risk. If you remember, let me take you back a few years ago. Jalen Smith, the linebacker, I think out of Notre Dame, had a really, really bad knee injury, and there was worry that he wasn't going to play in the NFL, and he went in the top of the second round. And he was a guy who was going to be a top 5 pick, and he went in the top of the second round because they weren't sure. I think you're going to hear a lot of comparisons between Tua and Jalen Smith. They're very different injuries, but they're going to use that as far as the uncertainty, the mystery about that. And I think because of that, Tua's going to drop, but I think because he's a quarterback, he won't drop as far as Jalen did. So I think he drops maybe 10 spots, 15 spots from where he was going to go. But I still think that somebody takes that chance because quarterback is such an important position. Let's see. Take a couple more, and then I'll jump back into my soapbox. Um, let's see. Who do you think is better, Tua or Trevor? Here's my take. I've kind of said this for a while. It's tough for me to kind of really give a full evaluation of quarterbacks a year away. I think that Tua, in my opinion, is a quarterback that you go get if he's fully healthy. The injury is complicated a little bit. As far as Trevor, he's had a little bit of a down year this year compared to where he was last year. I still think he's a really talented quarterback that's going to make some team really happy. It's funny. One of our resident LSU Joe Burrow lovers, Devon Gottschall, actually told me a few weeks ago he thinks Trevor Lawrence will be the best quarterback of the three. So, I think that he's going to be a really good pro prospect, but it's a year away, and I'm not in a position to wait any longer for my quarterback. I've waited long enough. Y'all made me wait through this year for a quarterback. I need my quarterback in 2020. Give me my quarterback. I need my quarterback, and I need it now. And that's the way I'm doing it. So Tua could be a star. Trevor could be a star, but I wouldn't wait for him if I'm the Dolphins. Why does Joe Shad eat dinner so early? I have no idea. We've had a lot of conversations about this over the last couple of days. Folks who didn't know, Joe Shad eats dinner at 5:30. I'm not sure why. If he's just a snacker. I'm a 7:30, 8 o'clock guy. 8:30 sometimes. But maybe I'm just young. Maybe that's just a vibe. But 5:30 to me seems outrageous. Let's see. Do you think the Finns take another shot on Jadeveon Clowney next year? I do think they may talk to him, but I think they got turned down this past year, and I don't think they go as hard as they did this past year. He's a heck of a fit in their defense, but just like Teddy Bridgewater, you get turned down once, I don't think this team is coming back. The girl dumped you. The girl, you tried to ask her out on a date, tried to ask her out to prom, and she said no. You don't just go back the next year and ask her out to prom again. You got to move on. You got to find another girl. And I know that Clowney's a very talented pass rusher, but they got to find another one. He don't want you. That's it. He don't want you. Haddon Gross has a question. Says, has Rashad Jones played his last game for the Dolphins? My thought is yes. I wrote a story about this earlier this week, and I think that I think that Rashad Jones, 9-year Dolphin player who sort of has been the heart of this defense along with Cam Wake for the whole decade. I think his time in Miami's over. He has 2 years left on his contract. He's due, I think, $13 million in salary next year, and $2 million of it's guaranteed. He's a 31-year-old safety coming off 2 shoulder injuries. He's on IR for another injury. He just doesn't fit. He doesn't fit the timeline. He doesn't fit what they're trying to do. I would be surprised if Rashad Jones is back next year. So get ready to say goodbye, in my opinion. Let's see. Are the Dolphins still in play for the number 1 overall pick? Yes, to an extent. There are 6 games left. The Dolphins are 2 games back of the Cincinnati Bengals. They still play the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 16, and that game could play a huge role in getting the number 1 overall pick. But the Bengals, they hold an advantage. They're in a situation where they're 0-10, and that is a bad team. I thought the Dolphins were bad early this season. Bengals, that's a bad team, man. I don't know. I don't know how they win 2 games. I just don't know. But if they do, they win 2 games, and the Dolphins are one of them, then yes, the Dolphins are back in the picture. But I think for right now, you should probably prepare for the Dolphins to pick somewhere in that top 5 between 2 and 5 rather than betting on that number 1 pick. I think that ship might have sailed when Brian Flores got him a couple back-to-back wins. I think I got 1 or 2 more, and then I think I'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. Let's see. The Dolphins are in Cleveland this week. I do think they lose. I predicted 31-16. Let's say the Dolphins. Here we go. Let's do this one, and then I'll go ahead and wrap in this one. So I got to let you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Let's say the Dolphins get the first pick of the draft. You getting Burrow or you sticking with Tua? The Dolphins picking first overall. That means that they lost to the Bengals. The Bengals won another game. and they lost the rest of their games, most likely to finish 2-14 and got that first overall pick. Some Dolphins fans would really be happy with that observation. Um, I think you at that point, it's got to depend on the medicals. If you really, really love Tua, and this is a guy that's been connected with the Dolphins for over a year, um, and you for some reason think his medicals are pristine and he's going to come back and there's going to be no long-term issues, and you don't have any questions about his durability like everybody else, then pull the trigger on Tua. It doesn't matter where you pick. If you love a quarterback, you take him. You don't play any games. That being said, for me, for where I've seen and just sort of the worry about his injuries overall and the hip injury, sort of the unknown, I'm probably taking Joe Burrow. I'm probably taking Joe Burrow. And I was a guy who thought that Tua was QB1, Burrow was QB2. But knowing all we know now, if I got the first overall pick tomorrow, I'm picking Joe Burrow, LSU, handing the card. So that's it for me this week, y'all. Appreciate you guys. We'll come back here next week. I'm probably going to have it either another time or I may delay a week. We'll see. Thanksgiving, I don't want to take any time from the family. So I'll let you guys know early next week if we're going to do it on Wednesday, if we're just going to hold off and come back again first week of December. So as always, thanks for joining me, and you guys have a good night.